Welcome to Real Estate Economics for Renters. I'm your host, Frederick Middlebrooks, and we are going to be diving deep in the details for this webinar, telling you about the history of the home ownership, things that are affecting the market today, and things that you should be considering when making your decision in terms of if now is a good time for you to jump into the housing market, or if you should continue to rent and take a different direction. So I am a licensed mortgage loan originator or mortgage loan officer. I live in the Atlanta metro area, so I'm licensed in Georgia, but I'm also licensed in Florida as well. I'm going to cut the introductions there because I have a lot of information that I want to get through, and I really want to value your time and get as much to you as I can within the time frame allotted. So we're going to get on with the presentation. I want to start things off with this article that CNBC released. Self-made millionaire, don't buy a home. So this is a direct quote from this gentleman. It says, unless you have 20 million bucks in the bank in cash, you have no business buying a house. That was a direct quote from this gentleman here, Grant Cardone. And if you have never heard of Grant Cardone, he is a multimillionaire entrepreneur, been very successful in business, but he's not a big proponent of home ownership. However, I wanted to get things kicked off with this article to kind of paint the picture that you are going to have a lot of voices and a lot of things in the media that are going to be telling you this thing and telling you that thing. My job is to educate you on the facts and allow you to make the decision for yourself in terms of what the best route is for you to take when it comes to your home ownership journey. So to preface these next few slides that I'm going to go through, I want to stop here for a minute to just say that fear sells. You probably already know that fear sells if you've ever turned on the news, because bad news stories tend to be what the media loves. And part of that is because they need eyeballs on the screen. They want your attention. That is how they make the money. And so by getting your attention, they put these they use fear tactics to put these stories in front of you that are really going to perhaps provoke some fear, perhaps provoke some anxiety, something that you may worry about, something dealing with, oh, you need to do these things, or you could be at a risk of something physical or a risk of something monetary, losing something monetary. So psychologically, losses are twice as powerful as gains. That's really, really important to know, because these are tactics that are utilized in order to modify or manipulate your behavior in one way or the other. So for example, let's say that I live in Metro Atlanta and the news comes out with an article that states these are the top 5 cities in Metro Atlanta for you to live. That may be an article that I would read. It might be an article that I might not read. However, if the news came out with an article titled, these are the 5 most dangerous cities to live at in Metro Atlanta, that would be an article that would garner more attention because of the fear tactic involved. People want to know, where's the danger? Am I living in one of those cities? Is one of those cities next to me? Is it a city that I'm considering moving to, or a city that I work in? Now, all of a sudden, people's brains and wheels are starting to turn. So these are the fear tactics that are used a lot of times in the media, and it's emotion versus fact, really. And so my job, as stated earlier, is to get you educated on the facts so that you are not scared into these tactics that you are going to hear over and over and over again in the media. So let's move on to the headlines. It's 2015 and you could buy a home for $300,000, but you turn on the news and you see a news article that states we're in a housing bubble larger than 2006. So you're thinking, whoa, maybe I don't want to purchase right now. We're in a housing bubble right now. I don't want to buy a home, and then housing prices drop and now I owe more on a home than what it's actually worth. So you choose not to purchase that home in 2015. Only a year from then, home prices actually go up to the tune of 5%. Or $15,000. So now that $300,000 home is now worth $315,000. But the next year, the news puts out another article that states we're in a new housing bubble and why it's less scary this time. Well, you don't want to purchase in a housing bubble, so you're thinking, you know what, I'm gonna hold off just a little bit longer. But if you choose to hold off, or rather, if you chose to hold off, it was to the tune of another gain in the real estate market of 5.4% or $17,000. Now we've got some new headlines coming. The next year, 2017, home ownership doesn't build wealth, a new study finds. Now, you tell me the one person that didn't build wealth over the last several years of owning real estate. I would really like to hear about that. But anyways, if you chose to listen to these articles and not purchase, and then in 2017, home prices went up another 6% to the tune of $20,000. But it's better to rent than to buy in today's housing market. If you're noticing a trend here is wash, rinse, repeat. Over and over and over again, it's the same bad news stories. However, home prices go up another 4% to the tune of $14,000. Housing market is about to shift in a bad way for buyers. This story comes out in 2019, and well, it was only bad if you didn't purchase a home because they went up another 4%. $15,000 in appreciation on that $300,000, that home that started off that you could have purchased at $300,000 back in 2015. But later that year in 2019, next year is going to be hard on the housing market, especially in these big cities. And the article goes on to explain the cities that it believes are going to be hit the worst, but saying that overall housing market, the year was going to be hard on the housing market. And well, it was really hard if you didn't purchase a home because home prices jumped 16% to the tune of $61,000. So these last two stories that you see on this list here, I didn't have the specific headlines that I put into this presentation. However, they were: the housing boom is over as new home sales fall to a pandemic low. That one was released in 2021. In October of 23, another article came out saying the housing market looks like a bubble, a 2008 regulator. Now, in 2021, we had 18% increase. And in 2023, which was just last year, we had a 4.7% increase in the housing market. So if you look at this list and all these news articles that were coming out year over year over year, housing prices were just ticking up and up and up. And if you listened and you did not purchase that home that you could have purchased in 2015 for $300,000, today that home is worth just under $550,000. You lost out on $250,000 worth of equity because you listened to these bad news stories rather than getting the facts of the history of what's been happening in the housing and the real estate market. So I want to leave you there and come on with some predictions for next year, because you're like, okay, well, that was the past. Where are we going now from here? So Selma Hepp is the chief economist for CoreLogic. CoreLogic does a lot of research and puts out a lot of data. And so she expects that about a 3.5% average price for growth in the housing market throughout 2024. Greg McBride, who's Bankrate's chief financial analyst, predicts that home prices will average low to mid single digits annually over the next 5 years. Lawrence Yun is the chief economist for the National Association of Realtors, and he predicts that homes will appreciate or become more valuable somewhere in the range of 15 to 25% over the next 5 years. Well, if you break down 15 to 25%, down to a year-to-year basis, that equates to anywhere from 3 to 5% year to year. So they are all saying about the same thing, somewhere in the range of 3% to 5% is the expected range in which we expect homes to appreciate over the next 5 years. And in the mortgage industry, there are a lot of professionals in the mortgage industry that believe we're going to be right around that 4% mark, 4.2% appreciation year over year for the next 5 years. All that to say that the predictions are pointed that home prices are going to continue to increase, just like we saw in the previous slide, over and over and over again. So don't let yourself get sucked in by these bad news stories and all of the noise that's out there right now. Listen to the subject matter experts, but even if you don't want to listen to the experts, look at the history of the housing market and what's happened over time in the housing market. And we're going to go through some of that history just so you understand it a little bit better. So why won't prices fall? You know, what's going to keep these prices elevated? So let's go back to 1991. The average annual home price increase has been about 4.3% since 1991. That's over 30 years of history. And the average has been about a 4.3% increase. So when you add in the highs and you add in the dip of 2008 and any other minor blips that may have happened in there, you average it all out, we still have an appreciation of about 4.3% year over year in the housing market. But that's not all though. Another reason that we're not going to really see that drop in the housing prices is that there's just not enough inventory out there. You see here from Rick Arevalo, who's the head of the mortgage company, New American Funding. There's just not enough inventory. Same thing with Lawrence Yun, chief economist of the National Association of Realtors. Mark Fleming, who's the chief economist at title insurer First American Financial Corporation, saying the same thing. There's not enough inventory. Skylar Olson, who's the chief economist at Zillow, she's quoted saying, we're not in a space where things are suddenly going to become more affordable. Again, we are not in an environment where we're just going to see prices take a dip. So if you were waiting on that dip to happen, it's not going to happen. And we're going to get into a few other reasons of why that dip is not going to happen. So you might have some people that use statistics from a chart like is displayed right here to say that, look, inventory is creeping back up. So because inventory is going back up, supply is going back up, that means prices are going to come back down. And yes, it's true. If you look at over the past 12 months, inventory has been creeping back up. However, again, what I want to do is get you to look at the bigger picture, because when you scale that back to several years, you see that even since 2014, this is a trend in the housing market. Housing inventory rises and then it falls, and it rises and falls and rises and falls. And if you notice, there's a reason behind this trend. Most of the homes are bought and sold during the spring and summer months. Not as much moving is happening during the winter months in December and in January. Part of the reason is because families, particularly families that have kids, want to move during the spring and summer months when their kids are out of school. That way they're not doing too much disruption in their school life, and they want to be settled in their home. So when those homes are getting listed because they're selling their old home, purchasing a new one, well, when those homes are listed, that adds to the inventory, hence the increase in inventory that we have every year coming up in April, May, June. You have that increase, July, increase in the housing inventory. But as those homes become sold and the activity starts to decrease, now you have a decrease in the inventory, and it happens every year. But what I want you to point out is that if you notice the trend of that inventory, it has been going down for a number of years. And so, yes, where we are here, we are back on an upward trend. And I do believe that we will start to see higher highs as we, as a country, work to climb out of this inventory shortage that we're in. However, don't just take a small snapshot of, oh, inventory is going up, and take that to mean that, oh, you know what, home prices have got to come back down. We've got a long way to go before we can get to the point to where we start seeing more affordable housing. So that's that information that you have there. But let's look at inventory from a different standpoint. Now, in the orange bars, you have annual completions. These are homes that builders have built that are completed in the years that are stated at the bottom. This starts off in 2002 and goes all the way to 2022. So it covers a 20-year history. So in the orange, we've got buildings that have been completed. And if you notice, in 2002, you have builders that were building at a level higher than household formations. Household formations is what's shown in the blue bar. Now, what's a household formation? These are families that are being started or new homes that are being formed by people. So say, for instance, if you have a family that's all living under the same roof, you got a husband, a wife, and 2 kids. And let's say one of those kids moves out of the house, and now they want to start their own family. When that kid moves out of the house to start their own family and look for their own house, that's a household formation. Now we need another home to be formed. Now another home is being formed. Someone else needs another home. Someone's moving out of the house. Someone's moving back into wherever. Those are household formations. So in the blue, you've got the household formations. In the orange, you've got actual homes that are being completed in the given year. So you see that in the orange, we've got builders that were building homes at a rate faster or higher than homes were being formed. And so that was the trend for a few years up before the pandemic, up before the Great Recession. And so you've got in 02, 03, 04, 05, you've got homes that were being completed at a rate higher than homes that were being formed. But something happens when we get to 2006. We got builders that built more homes than what had ever been built previously. However, we have a huge drop off in the number of housing formations. And that continues in 2007, where we have builders, they cut back because we had this huge drop off here. And this is leading up to that '08 recession as well. We have another drop off in household formations. And so you can see builders build a few less, and they're building even less, and they're building even less until we get to 2011, where it's about even. And once we hit around 2015, you see it flip. And now you have more homes being formed than what builders are building. And from 2017 onward, you see that we have a good amount of homes being formed above what builders are building. And you have enough years of that go on, that's how you end up in an inventory shortage. When you have all of these homes being formed or household formations, people that are needing homes. However, we don't have as many homes being built anymore, not as many homes being completed to be able to meet that demand. And so I want to back up and go to 2006. What happened here with this huge drop off? Why was it this huge drop off with the household formations, whereas we were on an upward trend for the years prior to that? So this is not to get political. I am not invested in the left or the right. I'm not concerned with whether or not you support the left wing or the right wing. My job, again, is to present to you the facts and let you know kind of what influenced the numbers that we're seeing on the chart right here. So in 1973, abortion was legalized in the US. And so that was the whole Roe v. Wade case, and abortion was legalized in 1973. So in the dark blue line that you see here, this was the Guttmacher Institute's numbers for abortion. And in the light blue, you see the CDC's numbers. Now, I'm not as concerned about what the numbers are. I mostly want you to look at the trend. In 1973, when abortion was legalized, we have a huge upward spike in abortions. And that kind of holds steady for a number of years, and then it starts to taper off. So with that, the average age at which a home buyer or a first-time home buyer is looking to buy their first home is around 32, 33 years old in 2006. So the Roe v. Wade decision happened in 1973. If you count forward 33 years from there, which was the average age around when first-time home buyers are looking to enter into the market to buy homes, that's what puts us in 2006. Only we have a huge shortage of household formations. Again, not to get political, but just to show you it is what it is in terms of things that influenced that huge drop-off. We had a huge spike in abortions during this period of time, and we felt the effects of it later in 2006, 33 years later. And so these are some numbers here for you. The median age of a first-time home buyer from 2003 to 2006 is 32 years old. This is according to the National Association of Realtors, and this is a chart that shows what the average age was of first-time home buyers, or the median age of first-time home buyers for the given year, stated from 01 through 2010. And you can see it's 31, and then it's 32 from 03 to 06, and then 31, and it kind of is in the low 30s. But for 2006, NAR's research has 32. According to PR Newswire, it's 33 years old from 2005 through 2009. So 32, 33 is about that age range that we have the average of the median age range for the first time home buyer. But again, we had that huge drop off in 06. So again, we'll keep it moving on from there. Pricing by the decade. In 1980, 1990, 2000, you can see this upward trend of housing prices. So 2010, we've got home prices in the 220s. In 2020, we got them in the 336s or 330s. And here we are today, median home prices are in over 400 now. So you can see the trend. Homes are getting more expensive year over year, decade over decade. Now, some of this increase in the price is attributed to inflation. And inflation is the gradual increase in the cost of goods and services over a given period of time. However, some of it is also attributed to homes becoming more valuable. So I want to get into that a little bit, and I'll hang out on this slide for a little bit because I think it's really important to understand how these affect you as a homeowner or even as a renter looking to purchase a home. So let's say, for example, you go to purchase a home, or you're thinking about purchasing a home. That home is affected by a couple of things in the economy, but the price of it is affected by two main things. The one thing being inflation. So let's say that you purchase a home and that home is $100,000. Let's say the economy is experiencing year over year inflation at 2%. That means in a year from the time you purchase it, that $100,000 home is now going to be worth $102,000 because of the 2% inflation. But let's say that a year from when you purchased it, it's not worth $102,000, it's worth $103,000. Well, 2,000 of that increase can be attributed to inflation because we had 2% inflation. However, that other 1,000 or that other 1% of that increase can be attributed to the actual value of the home going up. So that's sort of the correlation that I'm talking about, where you have inflation, which is driving home prices up, but then you have value on top of that, which is also driving home prices up. Now, think about all of the things that you purchase, whether it be your car, cell phone, clothing, jewelry. Out of all the things that you buy, how much of that is actually benefited by inflation in the economy? Meaning, how much of that, those goods and those goods or those products that you buy actually increase in value over time, where you can sell them for more than what you paid for them? Probably not many. This is one of the things that makes housing a great investment, a great place to consider putting your money into, is because homes do increase over time. So you can purchase a home, and then as the economy experiences inflation from year to year to year, your home price is going up along with inflation, but also at a rate above inflation, the value of your home is also increasing as well. So that's helping you to build wealth for the long term. And thirdly, you've got rent. If you are an investor and you use that property as a landlord to rent it out to tenants, you can make money that way as well. So we'll talk about some of the homeowner benefits. One of the benefits is increased equity. If you don't know what equity is the difference between how much you owe on a home versus how much your home is actually worth. So for example, if you have a home that's worth $200,000 and you owe $150,000, you have $50,000 worth of equity in there. That's the difference between 200 and 150. So you have $50,000 worth of equity in there. So what can you do with that equity? Well, there's a few different ways that you can access that cash value in your home. One is if you sell the home. That's one way that you can get the equity out of your home. But there are three other ways that you can also access that equity without having to sell your home. One is doing a cash out refinance. Another is doing a home equity line of credit. And then there's a home equity loan, all of which can access the equity in your home without having to actually sell that home. So those are some ways that having that equity that you've built through inflation and the value of your home going up can benefit you. But let's talk about rent for a minute. If you utilize that home as an investment property to rent out to tenants, those tenants pay you rent for the right to use your property. Now, when you receive that rent, that can be cash flow for you. Let's say, for example, that you're renting out a home for $2,000, but your mortgage payment on that home is $1,500. Well, out of that $2,000 you receive, you put $1,500 towards the mortgage, but that leaves $500 left over. That's free cash flow that you can put in your pocket. You can save and store for a rainy day or do whatever you want to do with it. But that's another way that you benefit from being a homeowner, is that you can make that cash flow from renting out that home as well. So what are some of the benefits of renting? Shelter. It provides you with shelter. Now I want to pause here for a minute to say there is absolutely nothing wrong with renting a home. You won't hear that from everyone who works in the real estate or mortgage industry, because you have some people who will tell you that renting a home, you're throwing your money away. Well, not necessarily. It depends on your situation. There are some situations in which it's better or more advantageous for you to rent a home. And then there's other situations where you might want to consider buying, because it will help you to actually earn more money and build more wealth over the long term by being a homeowner. So it really depends on your individual situation, but there's nothing at all wrong with renting. It's providing shelter for you, and that's accomplishing one of your most basic needs, which is shelter. So by renting a home, you are still accomplishing that need of being able to provide a roof over your head, a place for you to live. And there is nothing at all that's wrong with that. So you have to take all of the facts and all the information, put it together, look at your individual situation to determine what's the best next step for you. So moving on, time is money. I want to show you this chart, which starts all the way over in 1964 and goes all the way through 2022. If you can see that line, this is the median home price throughout the years, throughout the decades. And if you see the trend, it's up and to the right. Home prices have been going up and up and up. Now, I want to point out that you notice the gray shaded areas at certain points on this chart. Those shaded areas are recessions that we were in during those time periods. So we were in a recession back in the early 1970s. We had a recession in the 80s. There was a recession in the early 90s or early 2000s with the dot-com bubble or the dot-com boom. Obviously, we know the 2008 recession, which was a big one. But these were periods of recessions. Now, take a moment, look at the chart and notice how many recessions equated to a drop in housing prices. It doesn't take that long to realize that, wait a minute, throughout these recessions, home prices maintained steady or increased throughout the recession, with the exception of 2008, where you see it took that pretty steep drop in 2008 with home prices. But outside of that, that's not the norm. However, it's interesting that a lot of people like to look back to 2008 as their point of reference for why we're going to have more drops in the housing market. Whereas when you look at other recessions that have happened in the economy, those have not equated with drops in the housing prices, nothing to the level of a 2008. So again, I want to show you the facts, the history, really scale it back so that you have a bigger picture and can better understand what it is that's happening in the real estate market and the outliers that you should not be looking at and saying, okay, this is the rule. No, those are the exceptions to the rule, or the exceptions to the norm. Now, you'll notice at the end of 2022, you see that drop down there. That's not a decline or, a recession in housing prices. If you notice, prior to that, in 2020, we had a huge run up in home prices. You had some homes that literally doubled in value in just 3 years. That is huge to have that type of appreciation in such a short amount of time. And so when you have that much of a run up in the home prices, it's only natural for there to be some give back. So your home went up 70% in 2 years. Yeah, if you gave back 10% or 15% of that, you're still way up over where you were just 2 years prior. So I want you to look at that with different eyes and notice that that's not, oh, home prices are dropping now. No, homes went up so fast and so much that having a little bit of give back is only natural for the market. But as you saw in the previous slides, the projections for the housing market are to continue to increase year over year at about a 4%, somewhere between 3 to 5. I'm going to say about a 4% appreciation rate year over year for the next 5 years. And those are the projections from the analysts. So moving on, I'm going to skip forward a little bit to this slide here. Buying versus renting. I wanted to utilize this example, a $350,000 home at a 6% interest rate. Now, if you were to purchase this home at a 6% interest rate, your And we calculated with the taxes and the insurance and everything, as well as $300 a month for maintenance and upkeep. Including all of that, your monthly payment would be $2,900. Again, I included $300 for maintenance and upkeep. If I don't include that, then your payment's closer to around $2,600. However, I wanted to include that because my goal is to really give you a accurate, as true as I can get it, representation of an apples to apples comparison when we're looking at buying versus renting. So we have that $2,900, and the way that I came up with that $300 is because on average, a homeowner will spend about 1% of the purchase price of their home in maintenance and upkeep on that home in any given year, and that's on average. So some years you're going to spend more than that, some years you're going to spend less than that, but when you average it out, it's about 1% in any given year that you're 1% of the purchase price of your home in any given year that you're going to spend on maintenance and upkeep of that home. So that's how I came up with the $300 figure over that 12-month period. So $2,900 that we have that we're spending every month in a mortgage payment, which includes everything: taxes, insurance, maintenance and upkeep, principal and interest payments. Now, if you were to rent an equivalent home, it would cost you $2,170. Now, that's a significant difference. That's over a $700 difference in the monthly price that you would pay up front in year one to buy and pay a mortgage versus renting. So you're going to be saving money in year 1, 2, 3. And as you can see, as the years go on, the home prices are staying pretty steady because your principal and interest payments, which is the bulk of what you pay, that's fixed for 30 years. That doesn't change. Now, I did add in increases for taxes and insurance, but the reason that line isn't going up that much is because taxes and insurance are a smaller portion of your monthly mortgage payment. The bigger portion is the principal and interest. So opposed to renting, when you rent, year over year on average, rent will increase anywhere between 2 to 5% year over year, depending upon where you live at. In some cities, it's 2%. In some cities, it's closer to 5%. So it just depends on where you stay, but that rent does go up year over year, whereas those principal and interest payments, when you pay a mortgage, are fixed. So you see in the second year, it's a little higher for the rent, third year, a little higher until we get to year 7. And now we're about even. Now, that does not mean that you need to be in a home 7 years in order to make it worth it. This is just counting on a yearly basis, year to year, month over month, how much you're spending in cash flow. But there's some other things that I want you to consider and be aware of as well. But once we get past that year 7, and when we're year 8, 9, and so on, now you're paying more in rent each and every year above what you would have been paying had you had bought the home 7 years prior. So that's something I want you to be aware of as well. And the number at the bottom is the cash flow difference. So when you look at these 9 years, if you were to add up everything that you spent in years 1 through 9 for renting and years 1 through 9 for purchasing, you spent $29,000 more purchasing a home than what you spent renting a home in terms of what you paid every single month. You spent $29,000 more in monthly payments by purchasing rather than renting. However, that's not the complete story. So in moving on, when you purchase a home, you got to remember that those homes are appreciating over time. So we have an appreciation gain. And that's the home getting valuable over time. That's what appreciation is. So over that 9-year period, we experienced $132,000 worth of appreciation. So that means that our home that we purchased for $350,000 is now worth $482,000. But that's not all though, because we also have amortization. Amortization is you paying down the balance of that mortgage, which is putting equity back into your home. And so over that 9-year period, we paid $48,000 off of the balance of that mortgage. That's more equity that we have in the home. So to back it up just a little bit, notice that when you pay that $2,900 as a homeowner, all of that money is not just going out the door. A portion of that money, the portion that goes toward the principal amount of your payment, comes back to you in the form of equity in your home because it's being utilized to pay down the balance of that mortgage. So a portion of that money is actually coming back to you, whereas opposed to rent, all of that money does go to the landlord. So moving on, that portion that came back to you, when you total it up over 9 years, comes to $48,000. So you got that $132,000 and just the increase in the price of your home over 9 years, and then another $48,000 that you've paid off on the balance of your loan because you started with that $337,000 loan amount, and now you're down to that $289,000. So this is a chart that I want to harp on a little bit because it really does paint the picture and show you that after that 9 years, when you calculate all the differences in purchasing a home, the cash flow difference and everything, you are up $109,000 by having purchased a home over having rented a home. Now, again, I wanted to give all the numbers to you so that you fully understand what it is that we're looking at and calculating all the costs that are in there. So when you purchase a home, you have your closing costs that you pay, and we've got those calculated here at just under $13,000. You've got a cash flow difference, which we explained earlier is the difference between what you're paying every month as a renter versus what you were paying every month as a homeowner over that 9-year period. That came up to just under $30,000. Then you have the cost to sell. That's the real estate commission that if you have a real estate agent list your home, we calculated 6% commission that would go to the agents for you to sell your home. That comes to just under $29,000. So you add up all of those costs associated with purchasing a home, the money that the difference in what you're paying to rent versus what you paid to own in the monthly cash flow, as well as the cost to sell that home. You add up all of that and subtract it from the appreciation and the amortization gain, and you're still up after 9 years over $100,000. And it just continues to go up exponentially from there. As you can see in year 10, you're up $135,000. So this just continues to go up more and more and more as owning a home becomes even more beneficial and more beneficial the longer that you stay in that home. Now, at the beginning, you notice in years 1 and 2, those years are in the red. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier about there's nothing wrong with renting, particularly if your situation calls for it, because if you were going to live in a home for just 1 to 2 years, and then move or sell the home, you would be better off renting, because when you add in the cost of purchasing a home, the closing cost, and the cash flow difference between how much you would have to pay a mortgage and how much you would have to pay to rent, you're not going to have enough time to build up enough equity in the home through appreciation and amortization in order to sell that home and make a profit. You're actually going to be at a loss in those early years. And it's good to have a good loan officer that can calculate these numbers for you, because depending upon what your interest rate is, it might be 3 years that you would need to stay in that home or 4 years that you need to stay in that home before you can actually make a profit. And so it's good to know what the numbers are. But for our example here, in the interest rate that we use, which was a 6% interest rate for this $350,000 home, you would need to stay in this home at least 3 years to make it worth it for you to sell the home at a profit after calculating all of your losses and everything, or all of your costs rather and everything. So that's what I wanted to present to you, to let you know that there are a lot of benefits that come along with owning a home. And again, as you can see, they continue to grow exponentially the longer that you are in that home. So the quicker that you can become a homeowner and the longer that you can stay a homeowner, the greater the potential for you to build wealth over time. So now the ball's in your court and it's your move. You have the information, you have all of the knowledge and the facts that I've presented to you. But you also have the resources. You've got access to the computer and the internet, and you can research all of these things that I presented to you for yourselves. And I encourage you to do that, because it's only to your benefit to be more educated so that you can make the most informed decision that's going to put you in the best place that you can possibly be for home ownership and finances as well. So one last thing that I did want to mention, you remember that article that I showed you at the beginning of the presentation? There's one thing that I didn't mention about this article. It was published in November of 2016. So if you had listened to Grant Cardone and you did not purchase that home in 2016 for $315,000, you missed out on over $200,000 worth of equity that you would have had in that home just from appreciation, not including the amortization. That's just the value of your home going up over $200,000. So again, ball's in your court. Be careful who you listen to. Study, get the facts, do the research, and make up the decision for yourself in terms of what the best way is for you to go. Thank you for joining me for this webinar. I hope you got a lot of good information out of it. Please do like and subscribe to this channel, Greatest Asset Community on YouTube. I greatly appreciate your support. You can also follow us. We have a weekly podcast, the Greatest Asset Community Podcast. You can listen to that on YouTube or on anywhere where you listen to your podcast. Because we're on every week. We drop a new episode every Thursday. So please do listen to the podcast. You can follow me on social media, GA Loan Officer on Instagram and TikTok. But thank you again for tuning in. I greatly do appreciate you taking your time out of the day to hopefully get some really good beneficial information that's going to drive you into better decision making and better your financial status as a whole. So thank you. Take care. Be blessed.